You might be wondering, what's an Upanishad? Well, they're ancient India's enduring gift to humanity. Steeped in meditative insight, they seek to explain the world by way of direct experience. I just whistled there. These theophilosophical texts take as their fundamental base the irreducible primacy of consciousness, and they actually go a step further and assert that consciousness itself is the fundamental base of reality, which is something I might agree with. But we need not go that far, and we can just honor their primary and beautiful and correct insight about the irreducible primacy of consciousness. Today, there's one in particular that I'd like to examine, the Mandukya Upanishad, because found within its short verses is our very first description of states of consciousness. Now, to my mind, this marks a particularly pivotal point in the evolution of human thought. So, for the first time in human history, we are treated to a description of the fundamental four states of consciousness, and it goes on to relate these four states with that primordial and ancient spiritual symbol, Om, spelled phonetically A-U-M. The A, the sound that breaks the silence, represents the waking state. Here the subject-object duality of everyday affairs is asserted, and one's conscious intention is directed out and into the world. It is described as outward knowing. Now, of the subject-object duality, this just refers to the sharp dividing line or distinction between you as a subject of experience and the world as an object. And to philosophers, even abstract thoughts and emotions can be thought of as objects. The U, the second phoneme, begins to round out the syllable and represents the dreaming state, a subtle state where the subject-object still persists, yet conscious intention is directed inwards and is strictly contained within the realm of the human mind, because the dream is itself distilled imagination. It's purely noetic, completely mental. The third phoneme, the M, is of the most subtle nature. So subtle, the sound is made with the mouth closed. It represents the state of dreamless sleep. Here, consciousness is said to be undistracted and at peace. It takes no part in the cacophony of the waking or dreaming states. It is stillness absolute. Finally, Turiya, simply described as the fourth. This state is unique and can be said to encapsulate or underlie the previous three, and is thus symbolized by the totality of the spoken word Om. Or it can represent the very silence from which the Om may arise. Turiya is said to be the substantial base or substrate consciousness that allows and gives rise to the other three. It is said that the fourth is pure, non-dual awareness. This deep consciousness is the substantial substrate that allows for waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep to transpire, quote-unquote, on top of it. Later, in his commentary on this particular Upanishad, the great non-dual philosopher Shankara would carefully note that we actually experience the first three states throughout the day. So with the waking state, we notice material objects as they're very salient and occupy perception very deeply, while we can actually get lost in a daydream in a very subtle kind of thought. While the state of dreamless sleep can be thought of as when we get totally immersed in the present moment and we merge into a sort of flow state where we kind of lose ourselves. But still, Turiya is yet deeper than the flow state and is actually a stage of meditative realization. Of the fourth state, philosopher Evan Thompson writes, "It's the constant underlying source for these changing states, as well as a stage of meditative realization. It is sheer awareness, defined by its quality of luminosity. As a stage of meditative realization, it's the deeper background awareness that can witness these changing states without mistakenly identifying with them as the self. Also, Shankara supplies us with a definition of his own as well. What then is the reality behind all our experiences? There is only one thing that never leaves us, the deep consciousness. This alone is the constant feature of all experience, and this consciousness is the real, absolute self. In dreamless sleep, also, the real self is present as a witness, while the ego sense, which we call ourself, our individuality, has become temporarily merged in ignorance and disappeared. In other words, we lose our sense of ego self, or the social and narrative selves, as we merge with a deep consciousness that knows no plurality. This is a state where consciousness can become its own object, and the subject-object dichotomy that pervades the waking and dreaming states dissolves itself into divinity, and an Indian or a Hindu might say, Atman merges with Brahman. This pure, non-dual awareness is contained within the deepest depths of the experiential self. The witnessing presence that is identical to and inseparable from the absolute motion of the universe. That which is tied up in time and only ever present in the here and now. Each and every one of us, a timeless being that is at once a perpetual perishing and a constant creating. So that's the fourfold root of the Mandukya Upanishad, the first time humanity was ever given a description of states of consciousness. The waking state, the dreaming state, the state of dreamless sleep, and the always blissful, liberating state of pure non-dual awareness that they call Turiya. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.